I got a mission moment for you tonight. I want to not apologize, but acknowledge that Misha, you've seen this 3 times now. So I'll change it up slightly so that it is exciting for you, but it's worth reiterating and over communicating because I think it's a big deal for us as a school and represents some really great things. So each year, the DOE puts out school quality reports and offers these snapshots on every school in the city. They offer all kinds of stats about schools, one of them being obviously around academics and specifically instruction and performance. And we've been listed historically and typically as good, which is a good thing across this dimension of our school. This past year, we were rated excellent across this measure. Again, that's for instruction and performance. So that's benchmark one of our performance framework with SED, and this is the one that matters most and really is about how kids perform and what they show in their learning on state exams, both from a proficiency angle and for us, really importantly, from a growth standpoint over 3 years in middle school. And so in math and in ELA, and science is probably right there too, we were one of the two middle schools in our district to be rated as excellent, 4 out of 4, on this very important area. And so it's worth obviously celebrating and taking pride in the work we do. There are a number of folks, I think, behind the scenes here who make this happen. I want to shout out two entities tonight who are with us. First, I want to say kudos to Melissa in her role as Chief Academic Officer and making a series of decisions over the past couple of years around curriculum, which I think reflects some of these gains, as well as just her work with principals and with our teachers. And so, Melissa, shout out to you. Congratulations. This reflects your good work over the years. In addition, I want to shout out our Student Learning Committee, who puts in a good amount of time and thought and full attention every month and beyond um, uh, prior to these meetings, and I think has been extremely helpful to us in recent years in making good decisions and switches that over time have shown progress, as reflected in this award that we received or achievement that we earned this year. And so to Misha and to Ram and to Jeanette and to Juliana and folks who have served on that committee in the past, thank you to you for your guidance and collaboration and partnership. This is a big deal. So thank you. And team, be proud. This is, again, a wonderful achievement. And we're looking to stay excellent always as a small and mighty school. So obviously we're trying to get this out to families, get this out to folks who follow us and support us in partnership with the school. And so a lot of the work we're doing now is in just making this known. So I've got some data that I think is also intriguing for the high school that I'll share next week or next month, but I'll hold off from that today, keep you in suspense.
So did the supporters get this yet?
Um, some selectively. What I'm going to do, which was discussed with the development committee last week, was send out a general spring newsletter where this will be something that they receive within that newsletter. And so that's the plan right
Oh,
now. It
I,
could
I
also
think
be
you,
one-off.
yeah, exactly. I mean, this is like it's gonna get buried in a newsletter. You
Yeah.
should just kick this out.
Yeah.
And then how are you using this in terms of recruiting?
As an example, we had a fair last week where Kalu was tabling at a school, and this was on the table, and we gave it to the academic counselor of the elementary school who is hosting it. So that's one. We've got it out in digital marketing and social media right now. And so that's sort of happening on Facebook and on other sites. We're going to build out and create a banner for the front of the middle school, so it's there. Excellent, excellent school. Come join us. Applications being accepted now, and then I want to send it out to the principals of some of the elementary schools that we partner with, who are feeders to us now. That's what we have as sort of 4 or 5 concrete next steps.
Josh, I'll also add it's going out via mass text and email to families that both expressed interest and families that already applied.
Thanks for that, Chris. Any other ideas? worth putting on the table and also adding to the list. Again, let's get this out now while it's hot and not have it be buried.
Yeah. I think this is its own message. It's a separate thing. I
Mhm.
wouldn't bury it anywhere. I would just say, send it to everybody who supported us. Just say, check this out.
Yeah, I like that. Um, cool. So let's dig into the agenda for today. We had four really productive committee meetings last week, and so tonight's meeting is going to be largely informational and coming out of those meetings. There will be an executive session tonight where I want to talk a bit about some of the work that the governance committee has been doing over the past few months, which would impact the full board. And we've got a couple of approval items. I added two to the list coming out of Friday's AFC calls that were not on the agenda on Monday in my email I sent out. So that's the engagement letter with our auditing firm and a Form 990 for 24-25. So those, again, were discussed on Friday with the AFC and will be up for approval tonight alongside last month's minutes. So we've got a check-in meeting with our liaison with SED, our authorizer, coming up at the end of this month. We're excited by that. She's terrific, and it's always a productive and helpful conversation with her. These are some of the things that she's noted that should be focus areas for us. So we've kept an eye on it, and I brought it to the board each meeting to keep us very directly focused on it. And so I feel right now we're in good form with each of these in their front and center. And so I shared out that award a moment ago, and it's in line with the first item or focus area that we should be focusing on as we think about full renewal coming up next year, and that's middle school results for ELA, math, and science. And in addition to that, being on track with our juniors and the credits they have moving into their senior year. We're looking at that data now and may have a report out for our meeting next month. But I feel like they're in good form right now. Melissa's going to share out ELA and math mock results later on in this meeting coming out of the SLC call last week. So based on that, feeling good about where we are moving into test prep season now. Um, we outperformed our district on location and ELA last year, so it's about continuing with that this year. Again, we feel good about where we are right now based on mock results. So stay the course is what we're doing. With chronic absenteeism at the high school, which is a focus area for us, I'll say more about that momentarily. It continues to be a challenge. The weather hasn't helped. Some of the illnesses going around this winter haven't helped, but I like some of the moves we're making as a team, so I'll spell those out momentarily. And suspension rates are way down this year in comparison to recent years. So we feel good about some of the moves we've made there around alternatives. Finally, the teacher certification. I think over the past week or so, we've had two or three folks now be certified that were not. So we've made positive gains in this area, which I think is exactly what our authorizer wants to see from its schools. And so progress there with work to do. And so that's, I think, a snapshot of where we are now moving into spring on some of these key elements of school as they pertain to our authorizer and our visit coming up at the end of this month. We're going to now move into dashboard data, which reflects some of the data we just discussed. And so this is a snapshot for this month. What you see on the left is the areas where we're currently meeting our targets. Again, key areas of school for governance. Not a whole lot of movement from last month to this month. Only in one area, which relates to course pass rates at the high school, which we have a close eye on. There was a downtick there from the second quarter to the third quarter, where we are now. Melissa will say more about that momentarily. We feel like we've got that fully under control, but we're off mark there as we now approach the mid mark of the third quarter. Beyond that, things have been steady. There are areas we're kind of working on, including enrollment, including high school attendance and recruitment for the coming year, and some areas that are on watch. We'll talk about IA results where many of the results from different subject areas are green, but there are a couple of areas that we call yellow where we're keeping a close eye on them. Middle school attendance has been solid, but it's not quite where we want it to be. So we're staying the course with our strategies there and supporting the families that need it most so that their kids are in school each and every day. And I think that's it. So we're going to move into those areas that we're currently not meeting and spend a little bit of time talking through what we're up to in reversing course. And if folks have any ideas or questions coming out of what we present, please shout them out. Let's have a discussion. So I'm going to move right to enrollment for 25, 26. Right now, we're moving on. We've held steady over the past couple of months with regard to where enrollment is. It's lower than where we wanted it to be this year, but it's held steady. All of our attention now is on the lottery coming up for next year and to focus on recruitment for 26, 27. Beyond that, with course pass rates at the high school, I'll hand things off to Melissa to provide some context here.
Yeah. Hi, folks. So our goal is generally 80% of classes having a pass rate of 80% or above. At that number, we know that things like summer remediation or with our seniors or senior credit recovery period can be successful. Right now, we are off track. In January, 84% of classes had an 80% or above average. So we were right where we needed to be, a little north of that. Right now, the data represents about 3 weeks of February. So currently, math, Spanish, and some elective courses are not meeting, but ELA history and science courses are meeting. So we are close to where we need to be with a small amount of grades contributing to this. Some of the actions we're taking, our principal owns regular gradebook checks and managing her instructional leadership team to ensure that gradebooks are healthy and interventions are coming in when kids are not meeting what they need to meet. So this is in progress, and elegantly, these three areas these three subject areas where we're not meeting each have a different coach who supports them. So it's very manageable to lean into these departments. Instructional coaches provide weekly feedback on gradebook health with coaches and help them to strategize if it is a student achievement gap that is keeping us away from this goal, or if it's a habits gap. One other area Josh talked about, intensified attendance interventions are a priority. We do see this more frequently in first period classes, and we did see this dip happen as we saw attendance take a bit of a not nosedive, but dip down during colder weeks, during snowstorm time, etc.
So if there are no questions there, I'm going to move us into the second area. But those are some of the things we're doing around course pass rates now to ensure that we're back where we want to be with our goal of 80% of classes having a passing rate of 80%. So, with high school attendance and chronic absenteeism, we put a pretty solid plan in order where we divided groups of students based on their attendance in the first quarter into specific tiers of intervention, where each tier is slightly different in who's performing the intervention, who's providing the support to students and their families around attendance, and what it looks like. I feel good about that. There's been more conversations, more communication, more awareness of attendance being a priority than what we had in place prior to this initiative being in place. And so we had a meeting earlier this week where there was a lot of dialogue and a lot of anecdotals about like the way in which communication is happening with kids, their responsiveness to it, and a general level of just like as a small school, really being in the know with individual circumstances that may be holding kids back. In one case, I'm thinking of a student who has a sibling and is dropping off that sibling to school every day, working with mom to figure it out, but is late pretty consistently right now as a result. And so being aware of that, being understanding and also supportive of how the work around that is something that I think we're now positioned to do based on communication directly with kids through these interventions. So that feels good. And at the same time, over the third quarter, since this initiative has been put forward, we have seen a backslide. And the reason for that is there were a couple of threats that have gotten in the way from us seeing gains from a data standpoint here and seeing greater attendance levels. And that was, again, just some of the weather we've had and then some of the illnesses we've had, which is both both increased the degree of absenteeism that we've noted. So can't control those things fully, but we can work through them. And so again, I feel good about some of the actions being taken and its impact on kids over the long term and their attendance in school, which then reflects their learning and performance in school. And so I'll have more report next month. A couple of things we are doing specifically coming out of the meeting on Monday are threefold. One is just embedding some small but important incentives in the mix for kids as they work through weekly milestones for attendance and are in school 4 out of 5 days or 5 out of 5 days, depending on how they've been progressing over time. In addition to the incentives, we're also thinking about our specific communication points with families where there's a barrier, where maybe we benefit from greater communication or greater responsiveness on the part of family and working with them to have their child in school and haven't quite figured that out with regard to how to make it happen. So there's some work we're doing now in terms of what that communication should and can look like for individual circumstances. And then finally, the third piece would just be having a slightly better data and some different ways of looking at student attendance for each of these groups of students based on their circumstances and being able to give that to team, our interventionists, to then more greatly inform their actions, their support, their communication with kids and families. So, more to report out next month on where we are here. Again, a bit of a backslide because of things that we couldn't control for fully, but we're eager to rebound and see these interventions through successfully. Questions, comments, ideas there? Cool. And then with regard to student recruitment right now, we discussed recruitment with the governance committee and AFC on Friday. And here's where things stand. And Chris, please chime in if I neglect something here of note or importance. Generally speaking, we're behind where we were last year at this time. For sixth grade applications, we've got 61 right now as of this week. We averaged 98 over the past couple of years at this time. So we're down not insignificantly here. In the ninth grade, we're at 59. I think that's just short of where we've been recently in past years at this time at 63. So all of our resources with regard to people and communication are going right now to sixth grade over the next 3.5 weeks to sort of finish strong and have a lot of our interested families apply and then ultimately enroll. I think a big part of the reason for having fewer sixth grade applications right now are twofold. We're seeing many fewer families apply on their own. A lot of the work we're doing right now is very direct through phone calls with interested families based on intro calls prior to that. And then I'm talking about school, talking about experiences, talking about dreams and aspirations, and then having families get excited and apply from there. It's not happening the way it did in prior years or in past years where there was an application that would come in. And so there's just less of that happening than what we've seen in the past. And I think we're an even stronger option for families. So this has been a bit of a conundrum with regard to why that's happening. Some of it, I think, is just based on demographics and there being fewer students and families. Some of this being just the way in which families are approaching school and when they approach school. But that's one. And then I think the other is just we've got a good handful of feeder schools that we've worked with in recent years that a good number of our students have come from in fifth grade. Those schools have fewer students and some significantly so. And so with fewer students to draw from in those schools, we're seeing that result in fewer applications coming to us. So the response for us is to continue to communicate hard with those schools as well as expand out and have additional schools that we're partnering with and that our kids are coming from. Chris, would you add anything there around sixth grade?
No, that sums it up.
So that gives you a sense of like the scenario. I think we're doing a whole lot, and you'll see in very small type the 7 or 8 things we're focusing our time on right now. I think the one where we've seen the most amount of response is just by callings. And so again, we've got a good number of families that have signed up for finding out more about our school, learning more, speaking with leaders. And so a lot of that is about follow-up calls with those families, and then from there beginning to form a strong relationship. And so that's probably number one. We're going hard with digital marketing and their work with social media, and a part of that is just some of the announcements we're putting out there that should gain the attention of families as to think about where their child will be in school next year, particularly at this time where now we're heading in the spring and families are making decisions about application options and where they ultimately attend. In addition to that, we had planned a number of visits coming from our feeder schools, as well as a couple of visits to schools. And that's worked out well in having an excited and festive audience of students to have some fun with, and have some of our students actually correspond with them and tell them about their experiences at Unity. And so a couple of those are happening over the next 2 weeks prior to the lottery. And I think those are a few things we've done. We've done postcards. Last month, we have um, a couple of open houses coming up, one next week, and so a whole lot. And so that's what we're thinking about with regard to sixth and ninth grade actions and events as we head to the lottery in early April. Chris, anything else worth touting before moving on to ninth grade and high school?
Yeah, we just add we now have a mass marketing text tool. So as soon as a family signs up for more information about our school, they're going to be getting a once weekly text about our school. Each text is going to be a little different, something different. One will be about athletics, one will be about the bus, one will be about our excellent academics. And so once a week, every interested family will get a text. And it's working because they see the texts are delivered. And then when I get a family on the phone, they're like, oh, yeah, I saw the tour video. Oh, yeah, I saw the text you sent out. And those texts are going out at around 8 p.m. on a weeknight once a week. So people are getting those texts. So people know about our school.
Questions or ideas members have about recruitment at the middle school? Okay, so we have our amazing eighth graders, and we want to continue to work with each and every one of them in high school next year. And so, as of right now, we've got 30, about half, just under half of our eighth graders who are either signed up or planning to come to our high school or just did not submit an application to DOE schools. And so maybe they weren't active or they were committing to UNI already. And so just under half of our students in the eighth grade are in that situation. And then the other half, I would classify as kids who did, and families who did apply to other schools, and are interested in Unity as well. And so they're now making decisions about where they will be in high school next year. And so that's as of last week. And so right now we're active and preparing to have a whole lot of dialogue in the coming weeks with those families about plans for next year, our continued partnership with them, et cetera. Specifically, we've got our principal at the high school making some congratulatory calls to families that have committed to our high school for the next year. There's some customized communication based on students' interests and their relationships with adults at our middle school and high school that are happening. We've got comparative school reports being shared with students who have multiple high school options for next year and are considering those options alongside Unity. Chris is preparing those, and then we sit down with families and have some discussions about questions they have, their priorities, etc. Um, and then we had an event last week at the high school where about just under 20 of our eighth graders attended an open house dinner where we had students in the mix, we had some staff in the mix. There was a tour, there was food, a festive time. And so those are the things happening with our eighth grade going into the ninth grade. And so that's the work that'll be happening over the course of the coming weeks too. Chris, would you add anything there?
No, that sums it up. And we also had, did you mention the dinner we had recently?
Yes.
You're perfect. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the work right now, but it's definitely competitive, and I appreciate and applaud the team for fully being active in what is a very busy time of year, both with recruitment and all other things in school. Questions or ideas to share here before moving on? Okay, so with that, we've done a deep data dive on some key elements of school at this time of year. We're now going to move into our committee reports. And again, 4 strong meetings last week to now report out to the board on. So we're going to start with student learning. Here was the agenda from that call on Thursday. Everything we hit on during that call shows up somewhere in tonight's meeting in some form. Right now, we're going to focus on two elements of that meeting that Melissa's going to share. And one would be just our results with our interim assessment two, or our mock exams for math and ELA at the middle school, and then share out results from our second IA at the high school too, across four core subject areas. She'll then provide some data we collected in late January on plans for next year among our staff, which helps us forecast our needs, our attention, and plans, which is exciting for the coming year and thinking about team. So with that, Melissa, I'll hand things off to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Josh. So we'll start off with the headlines for our mock exams and interim assessments. The mock exams are at the middle school. Those were full exams students took in test settings. They're the last ones they'll take this year. I'm differentiating them from our high school's interim assessments because our high schools will take another round of mock exams in 2 weeks, which will be full assessments that we're using to predict. So some strengths coming out of this administration. We did see year-over-year increases in most of our tested grade levels and subjects at the middle school. And overall, students overperformed on the January ELA mock exams versus last year when we had just an incredible end of year showing as well. Students also slightly overperformed on the January 6th through 8th math mock exams. That's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math versus last year. And I'll differentiate what I mean there in just a moment. And then at our high school, our core four subjects that we track, because those are the subject areas that are best predictors of graduation, are all overperforming last year's IA2. So we're excited about this data. There are some growth areas. There will always be growth areas in these administrations. That's why we give them, so that we can zero in on those and focus through the rest of the year. One, and this is what I was indicating when I said 6 through 8 math mock exams, we also gave an algebra mock. Now, algebra is given several months after the math, or a month and a half after the math exams at the middle level, but we did see a large year-over-year drop for that mid-year assessment. We saw about an 80% drop year-over-year. So that is an area of focus for us. We also did see 6th and 8th grades have double-digit drops on the ELA mock exams versus last year. It would still put them at our goals for the year if we move that much, as far as outperforming the state, or the district, but it's still not what we want to see for our kiddos. And at our high school, 2 of the tests, ELA and biology, were given on a new platform by new team members. And for those 2, I'm just looking closely at our mock exam before I confidently report that I think that these are the amounts of growth that we'll see on the exam this year. We're going to look kind of very high level at the ELA and math results, and then even higher level at the high school results. And then I'll tell you a little bit about how we're approaching this information and what we're doing with it. So here, I'm actually going to orient you to the right side of the screen first with the bar graph. This is our actual proficiency levels last year in ELA. So in ELA, we had 61% proficiency at the end of the year on the actual exams. And this is helpful because it orients us in how much we tend to grow from our mock exams to our actual exams. So in 6th grade ELA, we saw about a 5% drop. This is consistent with the level that our students came in with as 6th graders. We knew they came in several percentage points below the cohort last year. So we're still seeing a movement within the students, even though we see a year-over-year drop there. Our 7th graders last year had an incredibly strong showing on the exam, as you can see here, with 69% of them proficient. And right now, we saw a 27% increase over last year's mock exam with this cohort. And then we also saw our current eighth graders have a 3% increase over last year's cohort, which is wonderful news because they were and have been our most struggling group of kiddos on these exams. So we're seeing some good growth with them. Overall, this would put us ahead of where we were last year, which would put us in good form. And ELA, you can also see below our students with disabilities. This is what I indicated earlier. So overall, we're looking at not a huge organizational drop. However, we are seeing 17% lower this year for our sixth graders with disabilities, and in our eighth graders, 11% lower. I will get to the response in a moment. Actually, I was getting ahead of myself. Any questions just on the data here? Great. Move on to math. And this one got a little cut off with the subject areas, but you're seeing sixth, seventh, eighth, and then algebra. So for our sixth graders and our seventh graders, we're seeing a little bit of growth year over year, 5 percentage points growth for our sixth grade, 1% for our seventh grade, and 1% drop for our eighth grade. However, this algebra class, we are seeing a more significant drop. And so we're keeping an eye on that. We're also seeing overall for most of our students with disabilities, similar to a little bit of growth there. While we see a rather alarming number in that algebra students with disabilities number, we're talking about 4 students there. So that 80% looks large, but it is representing a smaller number of students than above. So overall, what we would report to the state is similar or better than last year in math. Now, when we look at our absolute numbers, they look a little bit alarming, but they were very similar year over year. And you can see the amount we grow on math across time. Math spirals fewer of those content standards than ELA does. So when we take an exam in January, it does comprise a certain amount of information that students haven't yet learned how to do. So we cover a ton of that ground, and it lets us focus with kiddos as well. Questions on the math? Cool. Let's go to what we're doing next, Josh. Oh, I'm high school. How could I forget? Here's our high school. I won't spend too long on this because in our next meeting, you're going to see a deeper dive into this data. But we're seeing between 21 percentage point and 28 percentage or 32 percentage point growth in those subjects that we're tracking most closely year over year. We saw a little bit of a dip in geometry. We have a different teacher. And we found that exam a little bit less predictive last year. And US history is fairly similar year over year. So we're happy to see this upward motion, but I do think that the clearer data for us will be coming in 2 weeks when students take mock exams in mock predictions. We may see similar or even dips sometimes in the data here because there will be some unlearned content on that. But that year over year comparison is going to be very telling for us, and will be the stuff that teachers are using to plan that end of the year experience for kids to get them really ready. We have some shared responses across the network. When we spend this much time planning, taking tests, we spend time planning. So teachers have analyzed and created data-driven plans, which they include in-class reteaches, small group instruction, and for some teachers, that information is also used for intervention groupings. Weekly quiz tracking is now happening, and is something we'll report on the next meeting as we've got a couple of reps in. So these are smaller data cycles with smaller amounts of content, but we're watching that the group of students that we've identified who will be instrumental in meeting those exam goals and making sure that they're on track to do so, and responding each week if we see any trends where they are off track. The middle school has now pivoted in ELA and is about to pivot in math to test prep units of study. And they've also, if you come visit, you're going to see a palpable difference in our hallways. The theme this year for this year that follows through with our exams is Brooklyn Roots Boundless Futures. So you'll see some gorgeous brownstones, you'll see some subway art, you'll see the Brooklyn Bridge thematically throughout our building, and a lot of the like joy and themes that come and get students excited about our test taking time of year are in place now. And stop by, it's great. Our next mock exam at the high school will be, as I've said, a true dress rehearsal for the big show. And we will be able to talk about that when we next meet. And we have some increased teacher and student supports. The leadership team at the middle schools really zoomed into math. We're looking at those classes with frequency, prioritizing those for walkthroughs and for coaching. We have intervention groups for students. It's a little bit different than tutoring. All students can have tutoring, and weekly data takeaways inform those tutoring groups. But we've identified students who need concerted intervention time on foundational skills in both ELA and math at the middle school. So we've launched that and are looking forward to an earlier launch next year. And ELA at the high school is also receiving intensified planning support. While we saw some upward growth there, we want to really invest in that. We know that's an incredibly important content for our kiddos. Misha
oh yeah, go ahead. Misha goes first.
Misha has added the question. I'm wondering how data-driven action plans will be used to help teachers identify key skills and close gaps based on progress monitoring. Those are utilized regularly in coaching meetings, Misha, as well as like referred to in walkthroughs. And then we support teachers in refining them through those meetings as well. The department chairs at the middle school take incredible ownership in this test season, where we have just ELA and math, and have used those plans as they've refined the test prep units and craft those weekly quizzes. So both the DDPs and sort of mini ones are being created each week based on our quiz data. So if we knew that students were going in with a foundational skill of identifying a theme, that lens was used in creating these plans. And then we're looking for that in a shorter data cycle. And then the first question we ask in our mid-year reviews is, are students on track to meet their goals for the year? And then teachers and leaders articulate what the goal is and what data points we're using to assess whether students are likely to meet that goal as well. We do that both in these tested subjects, and then we set goals as well in our more project-based classes additionally. And then Josh, you had a question as well.
Maybe one question which might be helpful to discuss is, so generally speaking, this year's mock versus last year's mock, sort of similar with regard to what kids demonstrated, roughly. To what degree is our test prep season similar or different as we approach the exams this spring?
At the middle school, it's very similar. I'd say there's a little bit outside of the Venn diagram. Some of the timeline is a little bit different. We started the weekly quiz cycles a little bit earlier in many cases as well. But largely last year was successful, and we're working off of those successes. The different class needs are a little bit, they're different each year. So our sixth grade, we've had a little bit more focus on writing than maybe we did with our group last year, just based on what the data has shared in ELA, for example, but largely similar. At the high school, we'll have an earlier and different pivot this year. We know when that will happen, and we know in some ways how we're focusing on it, but we need that round of data to tell us exactly the skills we're focusing on and which classes we're prioritizing the most.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from members tonight around mock exams? Okay, let's take a couple of minutes to provide a quick share out on the results of our survey on team members' plans for the coming year.
Yep.
Back to you, Melissa.
Yeah, so this magic only happens with the power of an incredible staff. So we want to make sure we have one every year. At the mid-year mark, we ask folks where they're thinking. Are they planning to return next year? Definitely, absolutely not. And where in the middle they're going to fall. In any given year, we want to keep about 80% of our staff at Unity. There are some other slides here. Everyone has access to the slides. If you're very interested in this stuff, we've looked at how predictive each cycle of this early questioning is. It tends to be in the low 70s. So not, perfect, but a good barometer for where we're headed. We went to the strength. We are projected to hit our goal with about 81% of staff likely to return. Relatively few staff members are intending to definitely not return in the coming year. That we have some folks who are like, probably not, but we'll see. And then we have engaged in conversations with individual staff members who are on the fence. I think almost all of them, if not all of them.
And I guess I would just add that's really the power in this survey is being able to, as a small school, circle back with team members and have real conversations about plans and aspirations for the coming year. And if there's a pathway that is really good for school and for the team member, we try to make that happen. And so I'm thinking about even in the past week, some of those conversations have happened. And I think in at least two cases, there were folks in January who were planning to not return at that point in time, who are having second thoughts and having conversations with site leaders about plans. So there's a little bit of movement that happens. And generally speaking, we're in a good place this year based on just this data. And then anecdotally, just the communication that is happening with our staff, their managers, their leaders. So I expect for there to be a fairly strong retention of team members in the coming year.
How would you characterize the folks? Obviously, there's people who are going to move out of the area, or what are the main reasons they would not be coming back? I mean, in the past, we've talked about general, especially with the younger people, general sort of maybe I made the wrong career choice type of thing, which you can't really do anything about. People moving, you can't really do anything. What are the
Yeah.
reasons that people are sort of raising for
Great
maybe not
segue,
coming
Jim.
back?
Yeah, perfect.
I'm so glad you asked, Jim. Here are some factors at play based on the qualitative responses of staff members. There's like the regular ones: nuance, concerns, and frustrations. External factors. Hey, I have young children with COVID. I've decided to stay with them. Those sort of things. Salary is another evergreen one. So I put the ones that are very common year over year. I think that it's the teaching profession, so that's often something that comes into play for folks. But there are, I think, three that are specific to this year that are things we're thinking about and things that we know we need to either get better at or get clearer about explaining that they're true. We know that they're true and they will be true for at least a short amount of time. One is coaching structures, and this came more at the middle school than the high school. Some more of the high school responses said, I'm looking forward to staying because I like my coaching structure, or hey, it's an external factor. I don't want to commute to Williamsburg anymore, even though I like my coaching structure. The middle school, though, we did have a shift this year where we uncoupled the folks who coach on intellectual preparation and the sort of curriculum element from the folks who are coaching on teacher practice. And we've found that that is inelegant and not working as well as our prior structure, and that perhaps we should recouple those and then work really hard on the development of the coaches who are kind of doing a lot of things. It means that they're doing everything from being excellent teachers to soup to nut coaches. But perhaps it was a stronger structure, even though it stretches some folks thin. So that was one theme that ran through that we're thinking about. How do we provide the support we need to teachers in and to coaches in a way that feels feasible to everyone doing a great job? That was a thread that came through there. Another one that came through is the number of sections at the high school, with a little bit of overlap at the middle school. This is the first year in a while at the middle school where we haven't had 4 sections of classes across every grade level. We have 3 in some. And at the high school, we might have 2 or 3 sections of a content in, let's say, 3 sections of algebra 1. A full load is 5, so that means folks are teaching more than one thing. So that is something that came through at both ends. We don't see a reality in which that is, we just say, great, you're just going to teach one thing next year. It's probably not feasible with our current enrollment. So that's an example of something where we just might need to be clear and transparent with folks and then think about how we support them through that reality. And another one, Josh may talk about this, is career growth and opportunity, just being really clear on what that looks like at our site. So those are some of the challenges in the 3 that are not in italics, because those are evergreen. We're going to think about salary too, but are the things that we are using to inform our planning, not on a individual basis, but on more of a systemic basis next year. Josh,
Yeah.
would you add anything to that?
No, I think the first 3 items here, coaching structures, number of sections, and career growth, they're things that we would have predicted. Um, and there's some things that we can grow and get better at. So it's a good opportunity to just strengthen the way in which we're supporting people and their advancements and success in their craft. So we're thinking about some of these things now, and taking steps this spring and in the next year to make moves, and make things as easy as possible for staff to do their best work in honor of kids.
Yeah. Some other just factors or challenges we're seeing. Science across both sites is an area of need. We have someone who was an external sub became more of in a long-term sub role this year, covering some of our senior level sciences this year. That is appropriate because some of them are have workable curriculum. They don't have the end of the year assessments. But we know we have that need that we'll still have at the high school next year. And then there are some folks at the middle school level who may not return. So that's a challenging role to hire for. I have a couple of great history folks coming in, Misha. Saw one today. That one feels really doable, but science is something I'm thinking a lot about, how to recruit some strong folks. And then Chris will talk about this more probably in perpetuity, but some teachers who wish to return have made no moves to become certified. So that is a challenge for us as well. And then if our current projected enrollment holds, our staffing ratios will need to match our student numbers. So we will have to make sure that those are aligned. Some planned natural attrition will support this, but not entirely.
On the certification, if somebody doesn't make progress on that front, do they have a home elsewhere, or are they sort of saying this isn't for me? I mean, can they go to another
Yeah.
school not be certified?
Yeah, we have a certain number of allowable uncertified teachers. There's a percentage that any school is permitted. So I would say two things are true. They may be able to find a spot at a school who has that allotment available. The other reality is like I looked at our most recent update from NICED, and I think SUNY approved a number of renewals, and I think only like two or three, and they were uncommon. So congrats to Juliana, who had full 5-year renewals without a caveat, and all the caveats were around teacher certification. So there may be other places who will decide to hire them and not meet that metric. I'm not sure how rigorous every charter school's need to meet that metric right now is. So that's the short answer there. But no, not easily. Probably is also the answer.
Yeah, DOE schools would be no. Private schools, we have had folks in the past move on to private schools if that seemed right for them. Okay. Finally.
So what we're doing, we've looked at this as a senior leadership team across schools. We're engaging with staff members to say, like, I saw your survey, let's have that conversation. We've modeled out our staffing needs based on lower enrollment and compared that to what folks have said to us about whether they intend to return. In some cases, folks are like, this has been so lovely, but I'm somewhere else next year. And we know that we won't need to fill that role because of our ratios. And then Josh is working on our compensation bucket. I said that salary is evergreen, but it doesn't mean that we don't think about it. We are looking at that given our enrollment and making sure that we are competitive as a great school to work for. So our kids are getting great teachers. And then we've posted positions for key vacancies and begun the interview process. I had my first in-person interview this year. She was a repeat interviewer. We saw her last year without kiddos and said, hey, come back and meet some of our actual awesome children. So that's starting. Send us excellent science teacher vibes, and hopefully we'll remain in good form.
Mhm. Thanks, Melissa. So we'll move on to the second committee report out for tonight. This is coming from Friday's AFC call. Highlighted in green within this agenda are things that we'll talk a bit about tonight. Let's see. In addition to these items, or no, within these items, we did have a bit of discussion and planning for next year's budget, 26, 27. And that is going well right now. And so we're not going to report out anything this month. We'll have something probably next month for the full board to look at. We've talked about student recruitment already. We've got two items for approval that were discussed. And right now, we'll spend a couple of minutes with a report out on financials as of this year, as of January. And Kristen, I'll have you do that. And here is our wonderful summary.
Thanks, Josh. So we are reporting out our January results just due to the timing of the AFC meeting. We didn't get through February, so we'll have back up to date next board meeting, but we're up through January for this update. As of January 31st, and that should say 2026, we are meeting all of the NICED benchmarks. When we look at our net income as of month end, we are at 657,000. Last year at that same time frame, we were at 769,000. So we are tracking behind a little bit there, but we are still in a positive spot as it relates to the NICED benchmarks. And we've talked about it all year long, and tonight the enrollment being a key driver there. Our projected year-end net deficit is 1.76 million. That right of use entry is in there. That makes it look a little wonky. So when we pull that out, we are looking at about a $13,000 deficit. So we do have one of the benchmarks not being met at year end at this time, but Josh and I and team are looking at budget and spend every week, multiple times a week. So it is our goal to get that down to at least a break even, if not positive position. Just looking at all the remaining spending we have, and just trying to strategize how we can get that back into a positive spot. So we're meeting all the NICEAD benchmarks and subsequently the bond covenants. So we are meeting all the bond covenants right now. Just a reminder, those are calculated with both FONB and Unity. So both have an impact there, but right now we are projected to meet our bond covenants at year end, even with that negative or that deficit spot right now. But we are doing everything we can to get that back into a positive spot. So that's it for our January update.
Questions there, or would Jim or Sal add anything to the report out? Okay, so we'll move on to the next committee report out, which is governance, also Friday afternoon. And we talked about bylaws. We're going to be making some updates to bylaws this spring season. And so nothing for the full board to take on this month, but next month there will probably be some proposed updates to bylaws, which we'll discuss. So that was one discussion point on Friday. We also talked about a draft of board onboarding resources. We talked a bit about that during executive session last month. We'll do that again tonight during executive session. I've got some materials I want to bring to members here tonight and orient you to them so that over the course of the coming month, you can take a deeper look and offer your feedback on how we make this resource especially valuable moving forward for current and prospective board members. In addition to that, we talked about the board's self-assessment results and some steps we're taking and took stock of those. We'll share those out in a moment. And then we, as a committee, begin diving into specific areas of Unity's three-year strategic plans, specifically areas that may not get the attention across other committees where it would benefit the school to have an eye at the governance level on some key areas of that plan. And we spent some time thinking about enrollment, both in the short term and long term, as well as school programming in ways in which we differentiate, particularly at the high school level, and make our program aligned to exactly what will benefit kids in the current state of society and economy and what skills are most important for kids to have. So that's the quick report on what was discussed. Let's move into this would be areas of board actions coming out of the self-assessment. So I think there are five or so steps that we see of value as a result of the board self-assessment back this fall. One is adding additional expertise and membership to the board with fundraising capacities and interests. And so that's ongoing, but we're looking to bring someone on by this coming fall with those areas of interest and capacity. In addition to that, we're looking to um, update our onboarding materials for board members, and that was just discussed and something we'll discuss tonight again, moving into next meeting. So that's in action right now. We talked about monitoring our strategic plan within our board meetings and committee meetings, and so that's in action. Obviously, the SLC has an eye on all things student learning wise. And that's a part of our strategic plan, also obvious. And so the AFC does a great job of making sure that we're making good, healthy choices around fiscal health. Development obviously focuses on fundraising and resources and partnerships. And then the governance committee is doing a whole lot of strategy work right now with things like enrollment and also things like people and performance management at the school, which I think is really valuable. So more to say there, but that's kind of ongoing process work where, again, committees have an eye on the most important aspects of our strategic plan. Fourth would be adding a parent or perhaps an alumni with strong ties to our community and school to our board. That's also something we'd like to do by this fall. And so some conversations are happening now about potential people of interest who would be interested in joining our board. And then finally, just to shift, I think it's something that maybe is just more explicit now, but shifting to 100% annual give requirement among board members, where the amount is less important, but being able to say that every member provides annually to the school is something that we're now formally moving into. And so those are the 5 actions. That's again coming out of the board self-assessment. So thanks, folks, for adding their input, and thank folks for the discussion last month during the executive session. Um, that's the one area of report out today from the governance committee. Any questions here? Okay, let's move on to the last committee report out from last week's meetings, and that's with the development committee. You'll see the agenda in front of you. We're going to debrief very quickly on last month's ribbon cutting event, which was a lot of fun. And also, we'll talk a bit about goals fundraising wise, where we are right now, where that compares to where we want to be in June, and then some actions and initiatives we're going to take on over the course of the next few months and closing out the school year. So first with ribbon cutting, great event. I want to thank a number of folks here with the planning, Misha, Ram, Sal, Jim with just the general campaign work. This was a success in many ways, and it was good to have this be very celebratory because of the work that happened with supporters and our board in our campaign to restore our gym. So we got together in early February in the gym, had some fun, some festive games, just to say thank you and have stakeholders there and celebrating. And so you see on the right some of our leaders at the school celebrating the cutting of the ribbon for the restoring of the gym. And then on the left, Sal was really instrumental in having some local venues donate food and beverages to the event. And so you'll see me and two of our amazing underclassmen at 7th Street Burger providing a thank you, a hat, and a handshake and high five for their generosity. So some good things happening there to build from. But again, was a lot of fun, and look forward to doing something similar to this each year moving forward with a specific cause in mind. Development committee members, anything you'd add based on our debrief on Friday?
The one thing I'd add, excuse me, is let's have better turnouts for future events, and we can all contribute to that, making sure we get people to come.
Yeah, thank you for that. We had about 50 people. We were looking to get 75, so a little short there. That'd be probably the main thing we want to update or upgrade for future events. Um, and so I'll add one more thing. STEP is a lot of fun, and there are some members of this board who have a whole lot of talent and promise as steppers if they practice. And so this is us in the gym during the event, getting a free tutorial on some very basic step moves. And you see Ram and Sal in the back there having some fun and showing off their skills. Good work, team. Good stuff. And so that was the event. Again, more to come. We'll do more of those. Beyond that, let's talk about where things are development-wise. This table, this chart illustrates where we are now versus our goals for the year. And we've got a few different funding sources that we draw from. And so with private foundations right now, we're just under halfway there. We did not successfully acquire a grant with one foundation this past month that we had been vying for. However, we are a very strong contender for another grant this spring, which would help to support our literacy initiatives at the school. Melissa's played a prominent role in that work and preparation. So we should have an update in April, maybe even during our next meeting on whether we get that. That would be $450,000 over 3 years to again support literacy interventions at our middle school and high school. So in addition to that, with regard to insider donations, which come from members of the board, members of staff, et cetera, we are also about halfway to our goal. And so we are aiming to secure another 30 to 60,000 just based on likely donations, conversations had through June. And so I feel good about that. And so thank you for folks who have already given to the school this year. And conversations to ensue over the coming months to meet our goal there. And then finally, with supporters, just general people, individuals, or perhaps families that have given to the school over the course of the year, we've surpassed our goal at this point in time. We had a goal of 150,000. We've raised about 163, and I see a path toward raising another 50 to $100,000 just based on giving last year and conversations had over the course of the past few months through June. So we're in good hands there. And so overall, I feel like this is going to be a strong year historically for us as a school with regard to generosity and partnerships and giving. And so some work to do over the coming couple of months, but we're in a good place. Committee members, anything to add there? Cool, let's move forward. So this is what we see the next couple of months looking like from a fundraising perspective, and all things partnerships too. So, and again, this is like our wish list. So this may not come to full fruition, but this is what's on the docket. So there's some interest and some intrigue in perhaps doing some piloting of some math interventions at the middle school or high school. We've talked about this in past meetings, and so I'd love to make that happen in small pilot form this spring. And so that's one initiative we'd like to see through. Again, we see promise in it and interest in it, and so conversations to happen there. We want to follow up with MoFad, who was generous with an event this past fall, a dinner, and visit an exhibit that they have, which is really cool on street vendors and the history of that in New York City. So I want to bring some kids to check that out this spring and continue our partnership with MoFad there. I alluded to this earlier, but we do have a strategic plan, and I want to get a notice out to supporters this spring, this month, which raises awareness and some excitement around this plan to our supporters. And so look out for that this month. In April, I'd love to see us hold a second cultivation event this year, and that would be potentially on 21st century college and career readiness. And so some of that blends in with just AI and how that is impacting skills of promise, careers of promise, et cetera. And so obviously very provocative and intriguing, I think, for people to get together and talk about, and then perhaps see a path towards supporting specific causes in our school that best position our kids to be especially skillful in the areas of demand career-wise in the coming years. In May, potentially a third cultivation event around debate and advocacy. We're looking to partner with the Brooklyn Debate League again this year after a bit of a hiatus. So would love to get some people with that interest in mind together, think big and broadly about how debate fits into a school and the experiences kids have that empowers them moving forward. And then in June, we've got roundtables. So certainly want to have that in the mix. I'll talk about that in just a moment, but would also like to do a fundraising event specifically with our families and staff. There's been more of that happening in kind of siloed form at the governance level and at the supporter level, but I think there's some room and opportunity for engage our families and staff in some of this work too. So looking to do something with a specific cause in mind this spring there. And then if we're really on our A game, a woman who founded a travel program that we've partnered with in the past was at our ribbon cutting event. And we've had kids benefit from international travel and those experiences through her program in prior years, looking to build something even more robust in the coming year, both for our middle school and high school. And so an event around the power of travel and exposure, I think would also be an intriguing discussion for like-minded folks to engage in. So that's the wish list with regard to what we'd love to do over the coming months. And it would certainly set us up for a very strong set of possible experiences for kids moving into the coming year. Beyond that, just some concrete stuff. So with roundtables, we had about 40 people attend last year and have a great time. And I think we did a fairly strong job of engaging them in the experience and appreciating their time as they support our kids through what is a pretty rigorous process with their presentations. We'd like to up that to 75 this year, and so we're planning to make that happen. In addition to that, we're looking to have 80% of those who gave last year also give this year. From a metric level, that's a really strong year for a nonprofit. And so looking to have many of our generous donors from last year continue to give and feel connected to our school this year and moving forward. Beyond that, looking to increase the number of unique donors we have by 50% this year. I haven't dug into this data yet, but I think we've already achieved this just based on the campaign. So that's a big number. Like we've increased the number of people who've given to our school by 50%. I'll have better data on this next month. And then finally, looking to increase the number of folks who have significant capacity to give and will be classified as major donors by 7 this year. And so this would be folks who are able to give and in a position to give $10,000 or more to the school. I think we've got 4 already. So we're more than halfway there with people who this year are new to the school and given pretty significantly to specific causes or generally just to the strength of the school. So those are things we'd like to see through from a development perspective, which would really indicate and reflect just great work among the development team and members of our school. So, development folks, anything you want to add to this? All right, so that rounds out our committee report outs and the good work happening leading up to this meeting tonight. Jim, we're going to move into items for approval.
Sounds good. Okay, do we have enough people, first of all?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the first item is the minutes from the prior meeting. Any questions, comments on those? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Audit engagement, do we need to go into this? I saw it was a
Kristen would love to spend a couple of minutes providing some context here. Go ahead, Kristen.
Sorry, I had the email up with all the details and I just closed it. So just give me one sec. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So this is just from a procurement perspective. The value of the audit engagement is greater than 20,000. So we do need board approval to agree to the audit. So the audit is going to be 41,000 or $40,200. I did negotiate that rate down with MMB. The original quote was a 7% increase, and we got that reduced down to 4.5 in alignment with our per pupil increase this year. So we are looking for board approval in the amount of $40,233 for the $200 for the audit fee for 25-26.
Does that cover FOB too?
No, FOMB has another fee.
Okay. All right, any questions? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, Form 990.
Okay, and then the second item is the Form 990 for 24-25 that has been circulated out. The Marion's law firm is looking at it just to make sure that they didn't have any questions or comments related to it. I've done my review, don't have any issues. So tonight we'd be looking for approval pending from the board, pending no issues from Marion's law firm. And once I get that okay, then we would authorize MMB to process the audit or process the 990 with the IRS.
Great. Okay, any questions? Okay, so the approval is subject to S&C signing off. We're going to submit it. That's the ask, okay? All in favor? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I think at this point in time, a quick preview of our next meeting, which is the 29th of April. That'll be via Zoom at 6 p.m. And as I said, it's a busy time of year, so the tentative agenda reflects that. We'll obviously do some data dashboard work to see sort of what elements of school are worth discussing with the full board. We'll provide an update on state exam prep. We'll talk a bit about college acceptances and alumni success. We will share out some perception data from stakeholders and what we're doing about it as of now. 3-year strategic planning, as I mentioned earlier, some progress monitoring there. That's sort of like our first go at this. And so making sure that plan lives within our governance work and discussions. Some updates on recruitment. We'll have our lottery on the 1st. And so it'll be at that point in time about engaging families in matriculating. Development updates I'll provide. And that's what I've got on my list of 7 right now. Are there any other items that folks would want to add to the list as important for an April meeting? Cool. So we have our draft there. And Jim, back to you for public comment.